Volkswagen Amarok Panamericana. Auto which you often asked about, which actually surprised me. So I thought, hey, we should of course do this one for you too, after the used Amarok.
And specifically, we're talking about a car that I often hear people say, that's not it anymore. That's a Ford now, right? And so on and so on.
Hey, be careful with that, because on this platform, which is called T6.2, Volkswagen and Ford actually work together on its development. That means this isn't just a Ranger, this is also a Volkswagen. And you can really tell, they use their own seats, their own materials. There's obviously a completely different steering wheel, but they also use the different damping technology, which is going to be a big topic in today's test, and the Amarok should also be better soundproofed.
From my experiences with the new Ranger,
it's not a noisy car, let's be honest. I have to say, with these 80 tires, the car is on 255/65 18s.
It's, let's say, a similar feeling, but it's true that when you start driving a bit faster, right now we're on a really rough road, like coarse, nasty asphalt. We're currently going 80 kilometers per hour, and you really don't hear the wind much. It's mostly just the tires. So in that regard, definitely yes.
Panamericana, and in our case, the V6 TDI. That's an engine that belongs to the shared family of JLR, interestingly, Ford and Volkswagen.
It's an engine that has 177 kilowatts, about 600 Newton meters of torque. That's really not a small amount. Anyway, besides the engine, it also got a 10-speed automatic transmission, just like the Ranger has. And I have to say that
it's actually sometimes really surprising to me how efficiently, quickly and smoothly it shifts. Sometimes I think the 10-speed might do the job better. And it shifts and shifts and shifts and shifts. And sometimes it's either great or just above average, which of course is enough in a pickup. Panamericana should be, compared to the standard versions or compared to the Ranger, a noticeably stiffer vehicle because it has shock absorber technology, the so-called monotube. These shock absorbers are tuned a bit firmer. They are also slightly more refined. The car feels tighter, they are firmer. So it can handle off-road conditions better, of course. The ground clearance is about 235. The approach angle is 30 in the front, 23 in the back, and the breakover angle is 21. But I can say that the Amarok, even with this brutal ground clearance and the V6, most of the time feels a bit more macho than the regular Ranger.
Nothing has changed on the chassis. Double wishbones, solid rear axle, leaf springs, and so on.
It's really just the shock absorbers that, in real time, made the car much stiffer and at the same time delivered a sense of confidence. I don't know if you can really find out anything else. In certain moments, I don't want to say they're actually a hindrance when using our tires, but in some situations, considering how well I know this platform, I could imagine a slightly different setup.
What is the car like off-road? I think it's sufficient. It lacks a smart four-wheel drive. The new Ranger doesn't have that.
You need to play with the rear differential lock. Of course you do. When you get somewhere, for example, where two wheels are in the air. At that point, you have to lock the rear diff. Then it locks in the back and it gets going nicely. But for driving to hunting stands, I don't know. Across meadows, forest, it's more than sufficient, really. But is it as refined and almost as luxurious by European pickup standards as the old Amarok was?
Since it's been a relatively short time since I last sat in it, and let's put aside the fact that it had 200,000 kilometers on it, I have to say that, for example, the seats, even though Volkswagen worked on them and used different ones and made their own compared to Ford, were better in the old car. Not the upholstery, no, but the seats, especially later on. Here, for example, the seat cushion is extremely short, you know.
When I try to rest my left leg, it really ends up halfway down my thigh.
And I'm not really sure. Yes, I drive this car. I can go somewhere for an hour,
an hour and a half just fine. But I'm not sure that on a long trip, like to another country, I'd be okay with it. I can't say that. At the same time though, when it comes to the dashboard, that's a whole different story. Considering the times we live in and the materials used for car interiors today, this Amarok is light years ahead of the first generation. And the infotainment, which is clearly from Ford at first glance, maybe this will sound weird, but in my opinion, it's probably a better choice than if Volkswagen made it themselves. Because it's natural, intuitive, quick to operate, and the horizontal layout of the display really fits a car like this with a high dashboard, in my opinion. You're able to fit a lot of things in there, so you don't have to have stuff lying around on the dashboard, from left to right, right to left, and so on. I have no problem with this, definitely not. And when I see those huge side mirrors, they're like the mirrors you see at intersections sometimes. By the way, it's an extremely practical thing. They're close, they're big, so you can really see a lot. A very wide angle behind the car, and you have a perfect view of what's happening around you. When I see those bigger mirrors, I should mention that compared to the first generation, this car is longer, wider, has a longer wheelbase, and overall, when you're driving on the road, not just off-road, it feels, or at least it should feel, more stable. I can't say that I ever felt like I was missing stability in the first Amarok. Anyway, the information is that the new car is even better in that regard. I'll put my opinion another way. Both of those cars are damn good, and considering their pickups with leaf springs in the back, that's just fine. It's pleasant to drive. Pleasant. Nothing more, nothing more. It's the ideal thing for hauling heavy loads, trailers, and so on. And of course, a huge benefit is also the size of the cabin, because while before it was a luxury only for the front passengers, in seats that personally remind me of the Volkswagen CC or Passat CC, really, the design looked just like it back then. But today the Amarok is fully fledged. A family car, even if you have 2 kids, for example. You put them in there and they can grow and grow, and you don't have to swap the Amarok for some full-size pickup with ridiculous dimensions, because they can still sit in the back even when they grow to 180 centimeters. It's a beautifully spacious car, and not just a 2+3 cabin, but a proper 5-seater. No debate. And what has also changed significantly, with the Panamericana, I think you won't have any problem with it at all, since it's even higher. Even the standard Amarok, compared to the first generation, has increased its wading depth from 50 to 80 centimeters. Now, when it was dry in April, even the lower reaches of our biggest rivers often don't reach that much. So I think it's absolutely fine. The way we're going like this, I can imagine those. ATs naturally tend to slide. That's just how they are, which is completely normal, right? And maybe I'd want the shock absorbers to be just a bit softer sometimes. It's stiffer at the rear, and it's stiffer for a reason. So it can be this extremely high without compromising the driving characteristics. Otherwise, it would sag, become dangerous, and so on. So no, this really isn't a Ford. Volkswagen specifically adjusted the shock absorbers, springs, steering, response, gearbox, and the car's entire stability control setup during development. That means all the control units responsible for driving safety, soundproofing, and the overall character of the car, like the dashboard and so on, which we've already talked about. It's really different. Is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. I guess it depends on what you prefer. This one is more expensive and feels a bit more luxurious, with similar features on the dashboard, like these door handles and latches, classic Ford stuff. And it really comes down to whether you want a Volkswagen or a Fordic. I wouldn't be against either one. Both of these cars are extremely practical, and with the bigger cabin, they are also usable for everyday driving, just like they should be.
What do you think about the new Amarok?
Would you go for the older Amarok with the most powerful and beefiest V6 TDI engine with 200 kilowatts on overboost, Or do you prefer peace of mind, a warranty with a new car, and just driving? It's great that the engine has it. For me, the V6 TDI is like two halves for a pot. Probably fine without it, but with it, that's what it's supposed to be.
Is it fast?
It feels a bit more choked than it used to be.
We can't lie to ourselves about that either. It just goes. But then you're overtaking a truck coming out of a curve on a road with a 90 km/h limit.
Now we reached 88 per hour when I overtook him.
And you say to yourself, yeah,
the old one really used to move, and this one,
well, hopefully nothing will be coming.
yeah, something like that. But for a similar pickup, it's obviously more than fine.
And as for fuel consumption, it's really not low. Since the car has significant ground clearance, it has to push through a lot of air, and a lot of air also goes underneath it. So in the long run, you can really expect consumption around 10 or 11.
If you drive a bit off-road, sometimes in the city and so on, the consumption can easily exceed 12 or 13 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers.
And getting below 10 is really only for someone who's driving very economically, like going 90 on the highway.
And then it might work out. With this particular test car, of course, the weight's been used over the last 3,325 kilometers at an average speed of 44 kilometers per hour. You can see that it's mostly used in the city or just sits somewhere when we're filming and so on and so forth.
The long-term fuel consumption is around 11.4 to 11.5, and it took 74 hours to cover those 3,300 kilometers.
I can't say that it appeals to me in any way. You just drive it, you get to your destination, and it didn't bother you at all. That's definitely nice when we're talking about a similar pickup. An important piece of information for everyone who mainly wants to work with this car using a tow ball. Of course, our regulations only allow a maximum of 3.5 tons.
And the load capacity of the bed is up to 919 kilos.
That's a good figure. You're also looking at our car and thinking, hey, but there's something a little different there. 235 millimeters of ground clearance. This one is crazy high.
What will protect those sills there? And so on.
Actually, the Czech Volkswagen importer made a little project like that. And this car is equipped by the company Seikel. There are Koni shock absorbers here, and these shock absorbers add, watch out, another 50 millimeters of ground clearance to the car. That means we don't have 235 available, but we have 285, and that already matches how the whole car looks. There's also a gearbox protection here and an engine protection cover. There are these side sliders for about 50,000, so nothing happens to the car if you high center it. And of course, completely different.
There are also approach angles.
So let's do the math.
I have here a complete list of parts that are extra on our car. Shock absorbers, plus 50 millimeters of ground clearance, 43,000 crowns including VAT. Fuel tank protection, a very important thing, so you don't puncture it on the rocks somewhere. 17,500 crowns including VAT. Engine protection, a special steel plate for 18,500 crowns including VAT. Wiring harness protection, a very important thing, often forgotten and underestimated. But we've already seen quite a few of these pickups and various off-road vehicles and SUVs on lifts. And the first thing that usually gets damaged are the wiring harnesses, when a branch or something similar gets in there. Don't underestimate this if you're an off-roader. 8,500 crowns for wiring harness protection. Rock sliders on the sides, not just steps, but real protection for the car. 47,500 crowns. And protection for the fuel lines for 14,500. How much for all of that? The equipment we mentioned is roughly an extra 150,000 crowns. And this particular car, all in all, as it's equipped, including the premium Harman Kardon audio system, which you can't get in the Ranger by the way, I think it's listed at just under 1,600,000 crowns, about 7,000 less. That means we have a car worth 1,340,000 crowns in our hands right now, with all those parts absolutely ready to take a serious beating. And thanks to those shock absorbers, It's capable of fording up to 85 centimeters of water. It doesn't care that you're off-road. I still have a special stage up there amongst some rocks, so let's do it. The meadow is fine, of course, wet grass not so much. Then it's better to just switch to four-wheel drive right away, but as soon as it's rough terrain, with this chassis, the car absolutely doesn't care. On the road, I have to say, it can feel pretty stiff in places though. When you push it, you can feel that it's ready to go through some seriously tough stuff. I'm thinking if this modification might actually suit the Ranger better, you know, which is naturally less luxurious and more of a tough guy, just like this modification. But even on the Amarok, it turns the Amarok into something very interesting. Well, come here. This is good, this one. And you really suffer from that, huh? In the car? Not the car, it doesn't care at all. Let's put it in four-wheel drive right away and go over the rocks. Come here. Not with this ground clearance. Is that nothing? I fell into those ruts, which you're not supposed to do. So you don't damage the differential? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'll take one more picture of you. I think he enjoys it, yeah. I think he enjoys it. If I needed it, I'd be all set. Friends, I believe you enjoyed today's video review. I'm really glad you stuck with me. I'm glad that we can present you with these kinds of specialities, and that in today's times, when it comes to cars, I'm not sure if it's good to say this, but that's just my opinion, and that's really how it is. It's getting more and more boring because they have to follow regulations and so on, but it's great that similarly interesting projects are still being created, and that specifically Import Volkswagen is making the effort to bring us and show us what's possible without losing the warranty, but actually making something out of the Amarok and really enjoying it to the fullest. And so, I have to say, it's really taken to a whole new level all of a sudden. All right, that's all. Take care and see you here again next time. Definitely support us. Without that, Automotive couldn't exist, and I'll see you in the future with something, hopefully, a bit lower again. So that's it. I'll say hello.